Tremec's Magnum XL transmission for the 2011 to 2014 Mustang is a bolt-in replacement for the weak and troublesome MT82 gearbox. The Magnum XL boasts a 700 foot-pound torque capacity, which is nearly double that of the factory MT82, and features a transmission-mounted shifter to eliminate missed shifts typical of the stock transmission. Tremec includes just about everything to make the Magnum XL bolt into a 2011 to 2014 Mustang GT, including a transmission mount, steel blow-proof bell housing, and hardware. The input shaft is different than the Getrag MT82 and requires a 26-spline clutch. We chose Exedy's Stage 4 twin-disc clutch for this install, as its 900 foot-pound holding capacity more than matches the Magnum XL, yet offers silky smooth engagement and low pedal effort. To operate the reverse lockout and provide a proper speed sensor signal, we used a Bowler transmission all-in-one harness from Modern Driveline. We started the conversion process by disconnecting the drive shaft from the rear axle. We unbolted the other end from the transmission. Then we unbolted the center support bearing from the tunnel and removed the drive shaft. Next, we removed the starter. Inside the car, we unscrewed the shifter knob and pulled the center console panel. We disconnected the speed sensor, reverse lockout, and backup light switch harnesses from the transmission. We fabricated this transmission cradle from scrap metal, but a standard transmission jack can be used to support the transmission as well. We used our transmission cradle and a block of wood to support the transmission. Then we removed the bolts fastening the transmission to the engine. We removed the rear transmission mount from the chassis and the transmission. With the transmission and drive shaft out of the way, we disconnected the shifter from the transmission tunnel, and then from the support arm, and let the shifter mechanism hang free. We carefully removed the transmission and rolled it out from under the car. Next, we removed the factory clutch, flywheel, and replaced the bell housing cover plate with the plate included with the Magnum XL kit. Then we installed the Exedy flywheel using the original factory bolts. We used the supplied clutch alignment tool and tightened the clutch cover in the sequence and torque specified in the Exedy instructions. Next, we installed the steel bell housing. Tremec includes special spacers that cover the dowel pins before installing the bolts. The right spacer is offset to clear the bell housing. With both transmissions side by side, it's easy to see why the factory shifter's semi-remote design is so sloppy when compared to that of the Magnum XL. There's really no comparison. Also, the MT82's integrated aluminum bell housing doesn't allow the option of a steel bell housing like that of the Tremec. Steel bell housings are required by some drag racing sanctioning bodies to protect the driver in the event of a clutch failure. We fed the Tremec XL a couple quarts of ATF fluid to reduce the amount we needed to pump in the transmission after it was installed. We transferred the slave cylinder and spacer to the Magnum XL. The connections for the speed sensor, reverse lockout, and backup light are all different than that of the Magnum XL. Besides, the speed signal from the MT82 is entirely different. The Bowler all-in-one harness module connects to the Magnum XL and solves all these problems. We'll show you how we splice it into the factory harness later. We rolled the Magnum XL transmission under the car and raised it into place. We bolted the transmission up to the bell housing using the supplied bolts. Next, we installed the supplied transmission mount. The Magnum XL requires a typical slip yoke drive shaft like this one made by Dynotech for Modern Driveline. The one-piece drive shaft attached to the rear axle with a unique U-joint flange adapter. Next, we installed the shifter handle, center console, and shifter knob. Here's the electrical connections to adapt the Bowler module to the factory harness. The speedometer uses ground, power, and signal. The extra signal wire was not used. The brake light switch connections are simple. 2 wires, and since it's a switch, it doesn't matter how you hook it up. Then we loom the harness to protect all the wires. The Bowler all-in-one module is controlled by a free smartphone app that simplifies setting up the module to work on this 2012 Mustang GT. It connects to a smartphone via its own Wi-Fi. Here we can set the input and output pulses, make adjustments for tire size and gear ratio, adjust the reverse lockout settings, and even test its functions on a diagnostic tab. The reverse lockout adds safety and simplicity. The Tremec Magnum XL is the transmission every S197 Mustang should have had since day one. It shifts extremely smoothly, is strong enough for forced induction engines, and missed shifts at high RPM are a distant memory. Downshifts are just as smooth and crisp. This is a must-have upgrade for any high-horsepower S197 Mustang.